buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. That's the BRRRR strategy, and that's what most of the people who build these huge real estate portfolios, that's what they do. That's what I'm doing, and I'm going to go over it with you guys today. My name is Matt Coach. I created this YouTube channel to share my tips, tricks, and mistakes on the way to building a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio, and this is a little outreach of what the BRRRR method is, how other people can get involved in doing it, and a little bit of what the process is. So that's what we're covering today in Finance Friday. If you guys have heard of the BRRRR method before, if you're into real estate, it's probably not your first time hearing about it, but if you have not done a lot of real estate, then this might be the first time you hear about it. So I'm going to go over what each of those 5 different letters mean, the acronym, what it all stands for, and you guys have a bit of an understanding of basic real estate investment model after this. All right, let's get to it. Welcome to Finance Friday, where we're going to go over the BRRRR method. That's a method of real estate investment or strategy of real estate investment, where the idea is essentially an infinite investment loop where you get all the money back that you put into buying and fixing a house, then you do another house, and essentially you have a renter inside that house who is paying off the mortgage to that house, and you do it over and over again. So what does BRRRR stand for? It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And I'll go through each one of those stages and what that means, what you're going to basically do during each one of those stages. So first off, buy the house. So what do you need to do in order to buy a house, or what should you be doing in order to buy the house? Well, first step, you're going to find a property in a general area that you might do. You're going to look at things. You're going to comp the property after that point. So what is comping a property? So you find a property, you don't know if it's a good deal or not, but what you do is you find other similar properties that are finished, that have sold, and so you can get an understanding of what the finished value of that property is, right? So you find a house, you don't know if it's a good deal or not. You don't know if you like the neighborhood or anything along those lines. What you can do is you can go through like Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com, and you can find the other recently sold houses that are similar to that one. So if you got like a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet, you look for other 3-bed, 2-baths, 1,500 square feet that have sold within the last year, that are within about a mile or so of that property, and you try and get about 3 of them. The more the better, and then you take the average of those, and that's basically going to be your finished value, or what you're going to comprehend your finished value to be of that property. So if that's all good, you're like, hey, okay, this house is being asked for $50,000. It's going to be worth $200,000 when we're done, based on this comparable calculation. Then what we're going to do is we need to find the next step, right, which is we need to talk to the agent of the house and gather rehab info of the house. If you're not local, you can do like a 3D walkthrough of the house. But what you're going to basically gather from this is your estimated rehab cost of the house. So when you talk to this agent or wholesaler, you're going to ask things like, what's the condition of the roof? What's the condition of the siding, porch, interior of the house? Are windows going to need replaced? Does it need new electrical? Does it need new HVAC? Does it need new plumbing? You can sum all those up into what are the mechanicals like of the house, and you'll get a general understanding, especially as you do more of these, of what it costs to do all of the electrical, all of the plumbing inside the house, or something like that, if that's the thing that needs to get done. So you go about estimating your rehab cost, and then you go to make your offer. So the typical offer is you take this compared property value that you made, you multiply that by 70%, and then you subtract that rehab cost that you estimated, and that would be the max offer you would make on the house that makes sense. Why is it 70%? Well, typically a bank will lend 75 to 80% of this comped value of the house when you're all said and done. So when you factor in fees of that loan, you actually get somewhere near 70% is what you actually get back from that lender when it's all said and done. So this is basically the formula for what you would theoretically, hypothetically break even with on the house, and usually want to be less than this so that you can, make room in case there's extra fixes that need to be made throughout the house. What you're going to do after you get this offer and it is accepted is you're going to inspect the property. And that's where you're going to, basically take this estimated rehab costs and know kind of everything in the house that needs to get fixed is after this inspection, after this proper inspection. And you can ask the inspector if you are not local to the property and you can't walk the property. That would be one of these steps that you would probably do before this. Typically if you're local, but if you're not local, what you can do is a 3D walkthrough. So the inspector comes through and they basically record the whole house. You can ask an inspector if they do that beforehand. So that's what you're going to have happen. If during this inspection period you do not like the house anymore, you can refund this purchase. You can just not follow through with this purchase. You can tell them, hey, the inspection report came back and the rehab cost is much higher than anticipated, and you can either renegotiate what you're willing to buy the house at, or you can just completely cut it loose and say we're not going to buy this house anymore. Next step, the rehab process. So now you've bought the house. What are you doing? You're going to get at least 3 bids from contractors and subcontractors for the work needs to get done. So you're going to verify that that contractor's licensed, insured, and bonded, and verify any previous work from the contractor and make a decision on all those things together. Essentially, you want at least 3 bids so you can get a general idea of the cost for the job. The more bids, the better. 5 bids, you can go through and get a pretty good understanding, a rough understanding of how much it is to do that whole job. You can negotiate whether you pay for materials or they pay for materials. But probably you want a whole bid that includes materials, and then you can set up a payment structure with the contractor after you've found the one that's licensed, insured, and bonded, and you've verified the previous work. You set up a payment structure with that contractor. These are usually draws. So, you can pay in a couple different ways. I typically pay my contractors every single week after they perform. They fix up an area of the house and then they get paid. So that's the way I typically do it, but we can also do it. You also do it in 3 or 4 draws of capital, so you'll pay them something like 30% up front, then 30% when half the job's finished, 30% when the full job's finished, and then 10% on like an inspection to make sure that there's any touch-up work or anything that has to get done. They'll get their last. At that point, that's a typical 4-draw schedule right there. You could schedule that differently, maybe do 40, 30, 20, 10 or something along those lines, but that's a typical draw schedule, is something around that. If anyone asks you for over half up front, that's usually not a good sign. Sometimes when you deal with a subcontractor, someone who's like an electrician, they might do half up front and then half at finish of job. That's pretty typical for a lot of the subcontractors, but anyone who asks for more than half up front, you should probably run away from. That's definitely more than material costs, and they haven't performed any work for you at that point. So next step is rent. So how do you rent a house? You're going to find a tenant. They need to make at least 2.5 times the rent in income. So if your rent is $1,000, they need to be bringing in $2,500 that you're going to verify with pay stubs of gross income. That is minimal. Obviously, the higher the better in this situation. But a lot of the times you also have to be realistic that somebody who makes a whole bunch of income might be looking to actually own a house and not rent it out unless they have some other issues. So when you perform a background check, you want to check for evictions, felonies, and credit score. Basically, you're looking for big bankruptcies in this credit score. The more recent, the more worrisome. Same thing with the evictions and felonies. I have a general rule of any bankruptcies, felonies, or evictions within the last 5 years, I'm going to look for somebody else. That comes up to you. You guys can follow that if you want to. 2.5 times the rent income, though, is my minimum, and generally speaking, you should look for 3 times rent income is generally your preferred tenant. So refinance. Actually, one more step. If you can, with this, call previous landlords. If they can give you a landlord reference that you can call, that is ideal. Definitely try and do that as well. Not all of them will have that. You won't maybe always get in that situation where you can call them, but yeah, definitely when you're first starting, you don't want a terrible tenant. Your house is better off not rented than it is rented to a horrible tenant. So then the last step is refinance. What you do is that's when you get you determine what type of loan's best for you, whether you want to go conventional or DSCR. You can do conventional in the beginning. Eventually you'll have to do DSCR loans. Both of them are cash out refinances. So essentially what this loan is the bank looks at that finished price. They go and bring out an appraiser, and they tell them, hey, this house is worth this amount of money. Then they'll give you 75 to 80% of that in the form of a loan. They'll take a little bit off of that, about 6% in fees. So if you had a 75% loan, you're going to get 69% back of the price of the house. You want to make sure that when you're in this process, you're going to shop different lenders for that determined loan. When you find that lender that you want to lock in with, you want to ask them about their home insurance policies. This is why you're shopping home insurance afterwards, because you generally don't want more insurance on your property individually than what's necessary from these lenders. If you do get into that point where you have an equity position and you have a lot of these houses, what you can do is you can get a blanket loan over your whole portfolio. So that'll cover, like an extra $1 million. So you go like, hey, if I get in a big lawsuit or something like that, someone comes after all my stuff, I want another $1 million coverage on this whole portfolio. And you can cover all the equity inside that portfolio when it's all said and done. So get the home insurance, get basically the minimum amount that they need to close that loan. And then after that, you're going to give them all your necessary documents. So they're going to probably need your proof that somebody's renting inside that house. They're going to need, your personal income. If you go conventional, they're going to need tax returns. If you go DSCR, you're going to have to prove basically the rental income inside the house. They will ask for something like seasoning requirements inside that house. What is seasoning? Seasoning is either how long you've owned the house or how long a renter's been inside the house. Both of them are considered seasoning. So they'll have a rule where say, you have to have owned the house for at least 3 months before we'll let you do this refinance. That's a typical question that comes along the line. So it's not just rates that you should be asking about, but also seasoning requirements inside of the house. Another one is liquidity requirements. So I'll add both of those into here. So when shopping, ask about seasoning and liquidity requirements. So seasoning is how long you've owned the house or how long the house has been rented for. And then liquidity requirements is how much money they need to see inside of a bank account in order to give you this loan. It is possible you can get rejected for a loan because your bank account has $100 inside of it and they don't think that you're safe to invest to. So there we go. And then at that point, you're going to submit the documents that they need, right? So they'll tell you all the stuff that they go through and they'll need, and then wait for the underwriting team to review it, and they're going to probably ask for a bunch more information as you keep going through this process. They're going to go back and forth with you a few times. You got to be patient. Definitely start this process early, before you even have the house fully fixed up. If you have someone who doesn't need renting seasoning inside the house, or you're in a spot where you want to try and buy and get to the next house quickly, you want to definitely schedule this whole refinance period when you're still in this rehab setup, and get them all of this underwriting and paperwork and stuff going as you're trying to rent out the house. That is your best case, how to do this all the most efficiently. And preferably you already have somebody you do these refinances with in mind. Obviously you won't your first time, but you'll go through these steps, and eventually you'll probably find a broker who understands your situation, maybe does this pretty quickly. Same thing with home insurance. You'll probably find a broker there that you enjoy. You'll find a contractor that you like working with. For renting out, you can always throw this into, you can find a property management company that fits, basically these things together, that they do all these things for you. So if you have a pretty good property management company, they can do all these things for you, and then all you're really focused on is buying the right house. And then, the refinance will be some steps that you have to do. But, you do it all over again, and you get better each and every time. So that's the BRRRR method. That is how you basically turn, $100,000 into $100 million, at least from a hypothetical standpoint. It is a little bit more difficult. The idea, of course, is to take all of your money back out, but stuff happens. The real skill set is definitely finding the best deals, things that give you enough wiggle room to have issues with your rehabs, or have a tenant who doesn't pay you rent for a month or something along those lines, or maybe the lender can't give you the full loan to value that you expected on the house. All of these are issues that could come up, and you want to make sure that you have a deal that's so rock solid that it's able to come up on that. So do it all again. There it is. That's the BRRRR method. If you're interested in trying it out for yourself, this is what I do. This is my real estate strategy. More or less, I do have some ways of how I garner capital that I spend the majority of my time doing in order to make the BRRRR method work. But outside of that, that is the essential parts of it. So thank you all for your time. See you all later.